I'll come along to the members' room here at Tynwald to talk with Phil Gawne, the Minister, about really what happened at Sierra Leone. And we've got the pictures, of course, of a handover of this fishing protection vessel some months ago, which then caused a bit of hoo-ha that we were giving away vessels and why were we doing it. But we'll maybe come back to that. But the story we've got for you now today is we've got some pictures of the event that actually happened over there. I suppose I should start though by saying that the feedback we got here was that there'd been some damage to the boat when it got there. Can you clear that up for us?
Yeah, I mean there was a little bit of damage to the boat, and we sort of predicted this, so it was a bit disappointing really that the things that we had put in place to stop this happening hadn't happened. The idea was to get the boat, because it was shipped over on the larger vessel, the idea was to get the boat into the water as quickly as we could to avoid it being in a position where it could be pilfered. Unfortunately it was sat on the docks for 2 days, and during that period some very enterprising person managed to prise open a tiny gap in the bottom of the door and pinched I think there were 20 life jackets, a few pots and pans, some children's toys that were on board.
Because the reports we got back was mass damage.
And a VHS radio. But other than that, everything else was in reasonable condition. I mean, obviously there were things thrown about, there was a bit of a mess. But in terms of the PR, it didn't do any harm for us to appear that there was worse damage done than actually was done, because the whole point of the vessel is to try and catch illegal fishermen. So the more the assumption is out there that the vessel was going to take some time to be repaired, was the more chance that we could actually get the vessel out to sea and catch people. Okay,
so I mean this handover of, well, it was surplus, wasn't it, to your requirements here in the Isle of Man? That's how it came up in the first place. Taken over there to give a new lease of life. How did it go down? Tell us about it.
It went down extremely well, and what we should remember is this vessel was a vessel that was effectively bought on the proceeds of some joint operations, I think, with the UK and the Isle of Man Customs. It was effectively gifted to the Isle of Man as a result of one of these operations. So really we weren't in a position to sell it because it had been a gift to us in the first place. So it's gone down extremely well. I know there's been a lot of speculation, as there always is on these things. How much has this cost, and isn't it a disgrace, the minister going swanning off and all that? The actual costs are in the region of £900 for me to actually fly out to Sierra Leone. But Andy, the fisheries director, also went out with me. He's been out there for 2 weeks. He's actually been paid as a consultant by the World Bank for the second week he was out there, and that's probably covered most of the department's costs, certainly covered Andy's costs and also a fair bit of my costs as well. So in terms of the costs to the department, next to nil. Added to which, of course, there's the benefits from us actually being seen to be taking part in something very worthy like this. It's us not only showing that we're doing the right thing in our own territorial seas and trying to develop sustainable fisheries, but also recognising the much bigger picture, which is that the whole of the world's oceans need to be fished sustainably if we're going to actually be able to benefit from the fish in the seas and on the long term. So there's some really positive PR that we hope to generate now that we've got more of the video footage and all the photographs together, which we will be able to benefit from. But the most important thing is that there is $95 million worth of sustainable catch of fish, on an annual sustainable catch of about $95 million for Sierra Leone in their waters. Because they haven't actually got any vessel up until we gifted this vessel. They haven't got any vessel that could go out and catch anyone fishing illegally. I think they only actually managed to get into their economy $25 million of that $95 million. So as a result of what we've done, we could reasonably estimate a minimum of $20 million per annum extra income going into the Sierra Leone economy by removing that chunk of illegal fishing. It could be substantially more than that, but certainly the work that we've done, certainly the work that Andy's done this year, and he was also out there last year in terms of fitting satellite monitoring systems up, this work means that the Sierra Leonean government can now prosecute illegal fishing, which means the people in Sierra Leone can actually benefit from their own fish. And if you look at the figures we're talking about, even if it costs £20,000 for me to go out there, in terms of the benefit to the people in Sierra Leone, it's massive.
Well, while we've been chatting, we've been looking at Andy's pictures here, and it looks a bit of a pomp and circumstance there, and a lot of speeches being made, and you're obviously putting the Isle of Man on the map over there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it was great that had the opportunity, obviously, to talk to the British High Commissioner, the American naval attaché, and a variety of other dignitaries, clearly from the Sierra Leone government there. And there are opportunities as well that we shouldn't forget. Sierra Leone has gone through a terrible history. Certainly in recent years, they had an absolutely appalling. You can't even describe it as a civil war, because it was basically a gang of thugs going around and destroying the country. They managed 8 years ago to overcome that particular issue, and now, and indeed for the last 8 years, they've had a fairly peaceful time in that country. It has masses of resource, natural resource, and indeed really enterprising and promising people who, with the right sort of structures in place, will be able to develop a really strong economy. The economy is growing at 80%. Well, I think it fell. It was 80% last year. I think it's fell to just under 50% growth this year. Massive potential there.
Let's have a look at some of your iPhone footages in this. Take us through what some of this we're looking at here. What do you take?
Well, again, there was another element to this, and this was the bit I found most exciting, really, because I'm also chairman of the Overseas Aid Committee, and we have supported a project which Christian Aid runs out there with the Sierra Leone Methodist Church, and basically it is funding people to allow them to develop sustainable food production systems. So we've got an agricultural side, but we also had a fisheries side. So we're actually helping people buy bigger canoes with outboard motors on and decent nets, so that they can actually go out and catch the fish. Now, of course, last year when we were doing this, they were kind of wondering what the point was, because all these illegal trawlers were coming in and pinching all the fish, so they'd get out there with the canoes and they couldn't catch anything. But now, we've got this whole picture approach here. We're managing to exclude the visiting vessels, and I was actually sat in the communities in the same way as I would be maybe down the pub in Peel talking to our fishermen, asking the same sorts of questions, same sorts of issues coming up, saying, oh yes, our neighbours are coming along and they're cutting our nets, and what are you going to do about it, Minister? And it was quite good to see that. But we've managed to fund them to actually have more seaworthy vessels, that they are actually going to be able to go out and catch reasonable amounts of fish. We've also supported the introduction of processing ovens, so that rather than having to have really quite intolerable conditions in sort of traditional mud huts where there's loads of smoke and it's terribly bad for the women who have to do the processing, we've actually got much more energy efficient and less polluting ovens, which are far easier for the women to work. So lots of really positive things come out of this.
Because I mean, we've still got this thing now about giving money in the Overseas Aid, fund. It's being wanted to be increased by some people, but others now are thinking, should we not be spending money at home? Are you finding it harder and harder to get justification to spend money?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there are people who don't believe that we should help countries like Sierra Leone to develop. And, I was out there and they were all being incredibly positive and, oh, thank you so much for this wonderful donation of the vessel. And I was thinking, we were, the handover ceremony was right next to the tree that they used to tie the slaves to. And of course, the Isle of Man was heavily involved in the slave trade. I don't know that we've got an awful lot to be thanked for. And if you look at the overall history, there's a lot of damage that we did to that part of the world 200 or 300 years ago. And I personally believe that we have that moral reason to support places like this, but also there's a legitimate argument that says if people are starving, that we ought to try and help them to be able to feed themselves. Added to which, there is this golden opportunity out there. Tiny, tiny amounts of money in Manx terms can be invested to do masses of good in that country. The goodwill that is felt towards the Isle of Man as a result of what we've been doing out there is very, very big. You know, this part of West Africa is going to be, provided they can maintain stability. They're just about to have an election out there at the moment. Provided they can maintain stability and not go back into violence, and it does seem highly likely that things are going to be relatively stable and the election is going to pass without too much violence. You know, that economy is growing massively, and it is going to be quite a significant player in the world in the future. And the Isle of Man has an opportunity to influence that at the moment. So why are we not doing that? Why are we worrying about, in the overall scheme of things, tiny sums of money?
What happens next? Are you going to keep your relationship with them over there?
Well, yes, absolutely. I signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry for Fisheries and Marine Resource, which basically said that we will continue to work with the government out there. Apart from anything else, you know, well, there's the PR side, which obviously is quite good, but also actually for our people to see how things work there. It's actually quite a lesson for ourselves to really understand how good perhaps our systems are, or indeed how similar some of the problems that we face are. And again, you know, they haven't totally wiped out their fish stocks yet. We did with the herring industry. You know, we totally wrecked the herring industry 20 or 30 years ago or more. So actually, there's some very interesting lessons we can learn from this. We can certainly help them. The World Bank has now supported the 8 principles that Andy, the Fisheries Director, had written in the memo to myself and their Fisheries Minister. So it's now a condition of funding that they have to follow these basic procedures. And you know, yeah, we would certainly...
You're going to keep an eye on them, though? I mean,
yeah,
how the boat's doing and
absolutely.
Maintained?
We would certainly wish to do that. We've got Claire Bader, who's a member of the Overseas Aid Committee, uniquely is now working in Sierra Leone but remaining as part of the Overseas Aid Committee, so she'll be coming in on meetings on Skype and things like this, which I think is again quite a novel approach, something that we've not really done before as a government. So she'll be able to keep an eye on things out there too. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly exciting trip. I know that there are people who are quite sceptical about the whole overseas aid thing, but I think if you think about it as development and perhaps investing speculatively on some potential promise in the future, added to which it's doing the right thing, making sure that people can survive. You know, that one of the things that I experienced was the torrential rains. It was just the end of the rainy season, and you know, that's quite serious stuff out there. We're having the same sorts of things here. Just imagine what we would feel like if we found that for some reason our resources were more significantly depleted and we didn't have the ability to go around and rescue people and sort out the problems. We would kind of hope that there would be somebody out there that would want to give us just that little bit of support. You know, if we have our fisheries industry, for example, and everybody was coming in and wiping out our fish stocks every year, wouldn't we be rather pleased if we couldn't afford to do it ourselves, if somebody else came in and gave us just that little bit of helping hand so that we could actually manage to do that?